The holographic transmission flickered to life inside the command center of the TSS Horizon, casting blue light across Admiral Reese Wilson's weathered face. She had been reviewing supply reports when the communication request came through, marked with the golden seal of the Galactic Empire. Now, staring at the projected image of Ambassador Kreth, she felt the weight of what was about to happen settle onto her shoulders. The ambassador's three eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture meant to convey authority among his people. Behind him, through the transmission, Wilson could see the vastness of the Imperial fleet. 500 warships stretched across the darkness of space like a swarm of metal locusts, their hulls gleaming with the arrogance of a civilization that had never known defeat. "People of Earth," Kreth began, his translator rendering his words into flat, emotionless English. "The Galactic Empire extends its reach to your system. You will surrender control of your mineral resources, submit your military forces to Imperial command, and accept governance by our appointed officials. You have achieved faster-than-light travel only recently. You are children in a universe of ancients. Resistance is futile. Compliance is your only path to survival." Wilson let the silence stretch after he finished speaking. Around her, the command center had gone quiet. Young Lieutenant Foster gripped the edge of his console, knuckles white with tension. Commander Davis, her second-in-command, stood perfectly still, waiting for her response. They all knew what the Empire represented: 200 conquered systems, thousands of years of military dominance, a culture built on the assumption that might made right. "Ambassador," Wilson finally said, her voice calm and measured, "we appreciate you traveling all this way to deliver your message in person. However, we're going to need some time to consider your offer." Kreth's central eye widened in what might have been surprise. "Time? You need time. Admiral Wilson, we have brought 500 warships to your primitive system. You have 50 vessels, most of them outdated by galactic standards. What is there to consider?" Wilson smiled then, a small expression that didn't reach her eyes. 24 hours. We'll have our response ready for you then." "You think to stall?" Kreth's translator couldn't hide the disdain in his voice. "Very well. 24 hours. Use them to prepare your surrender documents. The Empire is not known for its patience with those who waste our time." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the command center in relative darkness until the normal lighting compensated. "He actually thinks we're scared," Foster said, breaking the silence. "Good," Wilson replied. "Let him think that." She touched the communication panel on her desk. "Get me every ship commander in the fleet. Secure channel encryption level maximum, and someone find me Captain Okoye." The face of Captain Diana Okoye appeared on her screen within seconds, transmitted from the TSS Relentless, currently positioned near Mars. "I saw the transmission, Admiral. They have no idea, do they?" "None whatsoever," Wilson confirmed. "Execute Protocol Labyrinth. All ships, all stations. I want every piece in position before dawn." Finally, Okoye's grin was fierce. "I was getting tired of pretending to be harmless." Over the next hour, Wilson coordinated with commanders across the solar system. To the Imperial scouts watching from a distance, the Terran fleet appeared to be repositioning in what looked like panic. Ships scattered, moving in seemingly random patterns. Communication traffic spiked, then dropped, then spiked again. It looked like chaos. It looked like fear. It was neither. Wilson brought up the tactical display, watching as each ship moved into predetermined positions that had been planned months ago. Humanity had known this day would come. The Galactic Empire had a pattern. They found new civilizations, evaluated their military strength, and then issued an ultimatum. They had done it to 200 systems before Earth. They would do it to 200 more if they weren't stopped. But humanity had something the Empire didn't account for. Earth had survived 5,000 years of warfare against itself. Every tactical manual in the Terran fleet drew from centuries of human conflict, ancient battles and modern wars, strategies refined through blood and necessity. The Empire conquered through overwhelming force. Humans had learned to win through adaptation, deception, and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. "Status report," Wilson requested. Davis pulled up the readiness indicators. Weapons platforms in the asteroid belt are fully operational and cloaked. Moon defense systems are at 100%. Mars installations are ready. Satellite network is synchronized. The gate array is charged and standing by. Good, and our guest is still watching. Imperial scout ships are maintaining position just outside Neptune's orbit. They're tracking our fleet movements. So far, they seem satisfied that we're in disarray. Wilson nodded. The Empire's scout protocols were well documented. They would observe, record, and report back. They would tell Grand Marshal Thalrax that humanity was scrambling, frightened, unprepared. They would tell him that Earth's defense was crumbling before the battle even began. Lieutenant Foster approached her desk, tablet in hand. "Admiral, we're receiving messages from Earth. Civilian channels. People are scared. They're asking if we can really stand against the Empire." Wilson took the tablet, scanning through the messages. Families wondering if they should evacuate. Children asking if the aliens were going to hurt them. Parents demanding answers. She felt the weight of every single message. "Open a channel to Earth. Planetary broadcast." When the light indicated she was live, Wilson spoke directly to the billions watching. "This is Admiral Reese Wilson. I know you're frightened. I know that fleet out there looks impossible to beat, but I need you to trust us. Trust your military, trust your scientists. Trust the fact that humanity didn't survive this long by being easy to conquer. We have a plan. In 24 hours, the Galactic Empire is going to learn something important. They're going to learn that Earth doesn't surrender." She ended the transmission and turned back to her command staff. "Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." Grand Marshal Thalrax reviewed the tactical reports with satisfaction. His 4 arms moved efficiently across multiple control surfaces aboard the Eternal Dominion, his flagship and the most powerful vessel in the Imperial fleet. The humans had spent their 24 hours exactly as he predicted. Scattered, disorganized, attempting to put distance between their vessels as if that would somehow save them. "Marshal, the deadline has passed," his tactical officer announced. "The human fleet remains in scattered positions throughout their system. No sign of organized defense formations." "Of course not," Thalrax replied, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "They know they cannot win. They simply lack the courage to admit it openly. Communications, transmit to Admiral Wilson. Tell her we are advancing. Tell her she has one final opportunity to surrender before we demonstrate Imperial power." The transmission went out. Thalrax expected a response within minutes, begging, perhaps, or angry defiance that would quickly crumble. What he received instead was a short message that would haunt him for the rest of his career. "Your move," was all it said. "Arrogant creatures," Thalrax growled. "All ships, advance formation Delta. We will sweep through their inner system and take position above their homeworld. 300 vessels forward. Keep 200 in reserve for the occupation phase." The Imperial fleet moved with practiced precision. 300 warships arranged in a formation designed to maximize firepower while maintaining defensive cohesion. It was a formation that had broken the resistance of countless civilizations. The power being brought to bear would be enough to glass a planet twice Earth's size. As they crossed the orbit of Jupiter, the first strange thing happened. A Terran destroyer that had been hovering near one of Jupiter's moons suddenly accelerated away at an angle that seemed random. Then another ship did the same. Then 5 more. Within minutes, human vessels throughout the system were moving in different directions, each one seemingly fleeing in panic. "They're running," the tactical officer announced. "Multiple human vessels breaking formation and attempting to escape the system." "Pursue them," Thalrax ordered. "I want every ship captured or destroyed. Let none escape to spread tales of resistance." The Imperial fleet split into smaller groups. each chasing after individual human vessels. It was exactly what Thalrax wanted, a quick hunt to demoralize any thoughts of resistance in other systems. His ships would overtake the fleeing humans within hours, destroy them efficiently, and then the real work of occupation could begin. 20 minutes into the pursuit, everything changed. The human ships that had been fleeing suddenly reversed course, not slowing down and turning. They simply reversed thrust at velocities that should have torn them apart, redirecting their momentum in ways that violated Imperial understanding of physics. Compact fusion drives flared with power outputs that made no sense for vessels that small. Then the asteroids started shooting back. "Report," Thalrax demanded as alarms began shrieking throughout the Eternal Dominion. "What is happening?" "Sir, multiple weapons platforms are activating throughout the asteroid belt. They were disguised as natural objects. We're reading. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. They're launching missiles and deploying drone fighters. Our forward elements are taking heavy fire." On the tactical display, red icons bloomed like deadly flowers. What had appeared to be a belt of rocks and ice revealed itself as a weapons network that dwarfed anything the Empire had encountered before. Railgun platforms began firing tungsten penetrators at velocities that turned them into relativistic weapons. Each impact hit with the force of a small nuclear warhead. "Electronic warfare detected," another officer called out. "The humans are jamming our communications. Fleet cohesion is breaking down. Individual ships are losing contact with command structure." Thalrax watched his perfect formation disintegrate on the display. Ships that had been pursuing individual human targets found themselves surrounded by drone swarms. Destroyers that had been confident in their superior firepower discovered that the human vessels were far more maneuverable than their bulk suggested. What should have been a simple hunt had become a nightmare of crossfire and confusion. The TSS Relentless, commanded by Captain Okoy, demonstrated exactly what humanity had learned from its violent history. The ship twisted through space in patterns that seemed impossible, firing precisely targeted shots that disabled Imperial vessels without destroying them completely. Her weapons officer had spent months studying Imperial ship designs, identifying weak points, power junctions, communication arrays, sensor clusters. Every shot hit exactly where it needed to. "3 cruisers disabled, Captain," her weapons officer reported with satisfaction. "They're dead in space, but life support is intact." "Good," Okoy replied. "Move to the next group. Remember, we want them to go home and tell everyone what happened here. Dead men can't spread the word." Throughout the solar system, the same scene repeated. Imperial ships that had been hunting scattered prey found themselves the hunted. The 24 hours humanity had requested hadn't been spent in fear. They had been spent preparing the perfect trap. Every Imperial vessel's position had been tracked. Every communication frequency had been logged. Every tactical pattern had been analyzed. Admiral Wilson watched from the TSS horizon as the battle unfolded exactly according to plan. Status: 78 Imperial vessels disabled or destroyed, Commander Davis reported. "Our losses are minimal. 3 ships with moderate damage, no casualties. The enemy is attempting to retreat and regroup." Wilson opened a channel to the entire Imperial fleet. She knew Thalrax would hear this, even through the jamming. "Grand Marshal, this is Admiral Wilson. You came here expecting an easy victory over a primitive species. You saw 50 ships and assumed that's all we had. You looked at our solar system and saw empty space. We saw a fortress that we've been building for 40 years, ever since we learned we weren't alone in the universe. Your empire conquers through overwhelming force. Humanity survived by being smarter, faster, and more stubborn than anything trying to kill us. Lesson 1 is complete. Do you want to learn Lesson 2? Thalrax stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In 80 years of military service, across 200 conquered systems, he had never seen anything like this. The humans hadn't just defeated his attack. They had turned his own tactics against him, used his assumptions as weapons, and made his fleet look like amateurs. For the first time in his long career, Grand Marshal Thalrax felt something he had never experienced in battle before: fear. Humiliation burned worse than any weapon. Thalrax paced the command deck of the Eternal Dominion, his 4 arms clenched into fists. His forward attack force had been shattered. 78 ships lost in a matter of hours. The humans had made him look like a fool. Worse, they had done it with tactics that any military academy student would recognize: basic ambush doctrine, electronic warfare, using terrain to advantage. The humans hadn't even used particularly advanced technology. They had simply used their environment better than the Empire ever had. "Bring all reserve forces forward," Thalrax commanded. "I want every Planet Breaker dreadnought at the front. We're not playing their games anymore. We go straight for their homeworld. Let's see how clever they are when their cities are burning." His officers exchanged uncertain glances, but none dared question him directly. The reserve fleet moved forward, adding 200 fresh warships to the 300 that had survived the initial engagement. Among them were the massive Planet Breaker dreadnoughts, ships designed for one purpose: to crack the crust of rebellious worlds and serve as permanent reminders of Imperial power. What Thalrax didn't know was that every movement, every communication, every tactical adjustment was being monitored by a network of human sensors scattered throughout the solar system. Admiral Wilson saw the dreadnoughts moving forward and nodded to herself. She had expected this. Pride demanded escalation. The Empire couldn't back down after a defeat, so they would double down. "Activate the second defensive ring," Wilson ordered. "Let's show them that Earth's neighborhood has more than one set of teeth." As the Imperial fleet pushed past the asteroid belt toward Mars, the red planet revealed its true nature. What had appeared to be civilian research installations and small colony domes suddenly deployed weapons that made the asteroid platforms look like toys. Mass drivers built into Olympus Mons itself, using the massive volcano's structure to generate devastating magnetic acceleration. Beam weapons powered by fusion reactors hidden beneath the Martian surface. The entire planet had been turned into a fortress over decades of careful construction. "Sir, Mars is firing on us," an Imperial officer reported, his voice cracking with stress. "Power readings they're impossible. Those weapons are drawing more power than some of our capital ships." The moon joined the defense moments later. Humanity's oldest companion in space had been hollowed out in sections, filled with military hardware that now came online: kinetic bombardment systems, laser arrays, missile batteries that could track and engage hundreds of targets simultaneously. Earth's natural satellite had become its guardian. But Thalrax was beyond reason now. "All planet breakers target Earth's major cities. Prepare to fire on my command. If they want to hide behind their moons and planets, we'll simply go through them." That's when the Empire made their second critical mistake. They attempted a ground assault on Mars, thinking that overwhelming the surface installations would neutralize the threat. 50,000 Imperial soldiers in drop pods and assault shuttles descended on the red dust, expecting to face scattered defenders. Colonel Marcus Briggs watched them come from his position deep beneath the Martian surface. His Marines had trained for 3 years in these tunnels, learning every passage, every junction, every hidden chamber. The tunnel network stretched for thousands of kilometers, built partially by mining equipment and partially by ancient Martian lava tubes that humanity had discovered and adapted. "Let them land," Briggs told his people. "Let them think they've won the surface. Then we show them what fighting underground really means." Subcommander Pelvin led his assault unit down into the tunnels with confidence. He had conducted orbital bombardments, ship-to-ship combat, and urban warfare across a dozen worlds. Underground fighting was just another variation. His soldiers moved in standard Imperial formation, weapons ready, sensors scanning ahead. The tunnel collapsed behind them 3 minutes after they entered. Then the lights went out. Then the atmosphere processors shut down. Then the real fight began. Human defenders knew every centimeter of these tunnels. They knew which sections had low ceilings where taller Imperial soldiers would have to crouch. They knew where the rock was unstable, ready to collapse with a small explosion. They knew where the tunnels narrowed into choke points and where they opened into chambers perfect for ambushes. Pelvin's unit lost half its strength in the first hour without seeing more than a handful of human soldiers. The defenders struck from side passages, fired from hidden positions, then vanished into the darkness. The Martian environment itself became a weapon. Dust storms blocked sensors. Pressure variations disoriented the attackers. Temperature extremes forced the Imperial soldiers to rely on environmental suits that human weapons had learned to exploit. "This is Sub-Commander Pelvin requesting immediate extraction," he spoke into his communicator, hearing only static in response. The humans were still jamming everything. His unit was trapped in hostile territory against an enemy that knew the ground better than he knew his own ship. That's when the tunnel collapsed ahead of them and rock began falling from above. Pelvin saw his soldiers scrambling, trying to avoid the cascading debris. He stumbled backward, lost his footing, and felt the weight of Mars itself coming down on top of him. Then someone grabbed his arm, pulled hard, dragged him into a side passage just as tons of rock filled the space where he'd been standing. When the dust cleared enough to see, Pelvin found himself staring at a human soldier. Sergeant Rita Flores, according to the name patch on her armor. She had just saved his life. "You need to leave this planet," Flores told him, her voice distorted by her helmet's external speakers. "We don't want to kill you all, we just want you to go home. But if you keep pushing, if your marshal keeps trying to burn our cities, we'll do what we have to do. And nobody wants that." Above them in space, the battle reached its peak. The planet-breaker dreadnoughts charged their main weapons, targeting Earth's surface. Thalrax prepared to give the order that would kill billions. His pride, his rage, his refusal to accept defeat had led him to this moment. "1 hour," he transmitted to Earth. "Surrender unconditionally, or your homeworld becomes dust." Admiral Wilson looked at the display showing those massive weapons powering up. She thought about the billions on Earth, about the soldiers fighting on Mars, about everything humanity had built. Then she opened a channel to Thalrax. "Bring it on," she said simply. The hour ticked down with terrible slowness. Across Earth, people watched the skis, knowing that death hung above them in the form of Imperial weapons powerful enough to shatter continents. Children were held close. Prayers were whispered in 1,000 languages. Humanity waited to see if their military could actually protect them, or if Admiral Wilson's confidence had been misplaced. Thalrax watched the countdown, feeling a strange emptiness in his chest. He had ordered the destruction of rebellious populations before. It was part of Imperial doctrine. Overwhelming force meant overwhelming terror, which meant compliance. But something about this felt different. The humans hadn't begged. They hadn't offered desperate last-minute compromises. They had simply told him to bring it on, as if they knew something he didn't. 30 seconds to firing range, his weapons officer announced. "All dreadnoughts prepare to fire on mark," Thalrax commanded, pushing aside his doubts. The Empire did not show weakness. The Empire did not retreat. If these humans wanted destruction, he would give it to them. "Mark!" The planet-breaker weapons fired. Lances of energy that could crack tectonic plates leaped across the darkness of space toward Earth. Each shot contained enough power to vaporize a small moon. 5 dreadnoughts firing simultaneously, their weapons converging on population centers that would cease to exist in seconds. Then space itself seemed to shimmer. Circular distortions appeared directly in the path of the energy beams. Not shields, not deflectors, something else entirely. The beams struck these distortions and simply vanished, as if they had been swallowed by invisible mouths in reality itself. "What just happened?" Thalrax demanded, his voice barely controlled. "Where did our weapons go?" "Unknown, sir. The energy readings just stopped. It's as if the beams entered some kind of portal and the officer never finished. Space shimmered again, this time throughout the entire volume of space surrounding the Imperial fleet. Circular distortions appeared by the hundreds, then thousands. They weren't attacking. They weren't firing. They were simply there, surrounding every Imperial vessel. Admiral Wilson's voice came through on all frequencies, calm and clear. Those weapons you just fired, they're currently being safely dissipated into the corona of our sun. The gates, Marshal. That's what you're looking at. Humanity has had faster-than-light travel for 15 years, but not the kind you use. We learned to fold space itself, to create doorways between any 2 points we choose. On the Eternal Dominion's main display, the tactical situation had transformed completely. What had appeared to be 50 human ships now revealed itself as an illusion. The shimmer of gates showed the truth. Humanity had been moving vessels through dimensional shortcuts, making it look like they had fewer forces than they actually possessed. Hundreds of additional ships began appearing through gates scattered across the solar system. We could have ended this battle in the first minute, Wilson continued. We could have opened gates inside your ships, teleported your reactors into deep space, left your entire fleet dead in the water. We chose not to. Do you understand why? Thalrax said nothing. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The humans had technology that made Imperial science look primitive. They could move energy, matter, entire ships through these gates. The tactical implications were staggering. They could attack from anywhere, defend from everywhere. The very concept of range became meaningless when you could open a doorway across light years. We chose not to, Wilson said, because we're not conquerors. Watch. One of the Imperial vessels that had been disabled in the earlier fighting suddenly found itself surrounded by the shimmer effect. A moment later, it appeared near one of the gates close to Earth. Human repair ships immediately moved toward it. That cruiser has 400 crew members who need medical attention, Wilson explained. We're bringing them into range of our facilities, not as prisoners, as patients. We'll repair your ship and return your people, because that's what civilized species do. Throughout the Imperial fleet, officers watched in stunned silence as more disabled vessels were carefully moved through gates to safe positions. The humans weren't destroying them. They were saving them. They were using technology that could have won the war in seconds, and instead they were using it for rescue operations. Pelvin, still trapped in the Martian tunnels with Sergeant Flores, listened to the transmission through his suit's emergency receiver. Your admiral is offering to help us. That's what we do, Flores replied. We fight when we have to. We stop when we don't have to. You people brought 500 warships to kill us because you thought we were weak. We're not weak. We're just not cruel. There's a difference. In orbit above Earth, something else began happening. The gates around the Imperial fleet started pulsing with energy, drawing power from humanity's fusion reactors scattered across the solar system. But they weren't attacking. They were demonstrating. A single gate near Jupiter grew to massive size, opening a doorway near the gas giant's equator. Energy began flowing through, radiation and magnetic fields channeled from Jupiter itself. The power readings were astronomical. A single one of these gates, properly positioned, could tap the energy output of an entire star. This is what we built, Wilson said. Not weapons, tools. We use these gates to collect clean energy, to travel between stars without months-long journeys, to explore and build and create. You came here with tools of destruction. We live with tools of creation that could be turned to destruction if we wanted, but we don't want that. Commander Sileth, captain of the Imperial cruiser Vengeance's Edge, broke protocol and spoke directly on the command channel. Grand Marshal, I request permission to cease hostilities. This war is unjust. We attacked a civilization that meant us no harm, that possesses technology beyond ours, and that chooses mercy over victory. The ancient codes of the Empire forbid unjust conquest. I invoke those codes now. Other voices joined in. Officers who had followed orders without question now questioned everything. The certainty that had held the empire together for millennia began to crack, not from defeat alone, but from the realization that they had become the villains in a story they thought they were the heroes of. Thalrax looked at his displays, seeing his fleet surrounded by technology he couldn't defeat, facing an enemy that refused to be cruel even when they had every right to be. He thought about Pelvin trapped on Mars, about the hundreds of wounded crew members being rescued by human medical teams, about everything the Empire represented. "Cease fire," he said quietly. "All ships cease fire. Admiral Wilson, I request negotiation terms." 3 days passed between the ceasefire and the first formal meeting. 3 days in which wounded Imperial soldiers received treatment in human medical facilities. 3 days in which disabled ships were repaired and resupplied by Terran engineers who worked alongside their former enemies. 3 days in which the galaxy watched and wondered what would happen next. A neutral space station appeared at Earth's fifth Lagrange point, constructed by both humans and Imperial workers in record time. They called it Unity Point. The name felt optimistic given how much blood had been spilled, but Wilson insisted on it. If they were going to build a peace, they needed to believe peace was possible. Admiral Reese Wilson arrived at the station aboard a small shuttle, accompanied only by Commander Davis and a security detail that carried no visible weapons. She walked through corridors where human and Imperial crew members passed each other with cautious nods, everyone uncertain of the new reality they found themselves in. Grand Marshal Thalrax waited in the main conference room, his 4 arms crossed in a gesture that could have meant defensiveness or contemplation. Pelvin stood beside him, still bearing the scars from the tunnel collapse on Mars. When Wilson entered, both Imperial officers straightened, though neither seemed sure what the appropriate protocol was. "Marshal," Wilson greeted him with a simple nod. "Sub-Commander." "Admiral," Thalrax gestured to the chairs arranged around a circular table. No head position, no implied superiority. "I admit I expected you to arrive with a list of demands, tribute, territory, perhaps my head on a plate." Wilson sat down slowly, feeling every one of her 58 years in that moment. "We didn't win, Marshal. Nobody wins in war. We just didn't lose. There's a difference. You defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy without destroying us. That seems like winning to me." "My grandparents lived through the Third World War," Wilson said quietly. 20 million dead before the nuclear exchanges, 50 million more in the famines that followed. When it ended, both sides claimed victory. Both sides waved flags and celebrated. And both sides spent the next century trying to rebuild what they'd destroyed. That's not winning. That's surviving long enough to realize how stupid you were. Thalrax settled into his seat, his multiple eyes studying Wilson carefully. "You're trying to tell me something." "I'm trying to tell you that humanity has been where your empire is now. We conquered each other for thousands of years. We built weapons that could crack continents. We poisoned our own atmosphere competing for resources and power. We nearly destroyed ourselves at least 3 times before we finally learned." "Learned what?" "That strength without wisdom is just violence with better equipment." Pelvin spoke up for the first time. "I saw your museums, Admiral. While recovering from my injuries, I was given access to human historical records. Your wars, your genocides, your mistakes. You don't hide them." "Why would we?" Wilson asked. "Forgetting our failures doesn't make them go away. It just makes it easier to repeat them." Over the next several hours they talked, not about surrender terms or treaty conditions, but about history. Wilson showed them records of Earth's darkest moments, not propaganda, not sanitized versions for public consumption. The actual brutal truth of humanity's violent past: concentration camps, atomic bombings, ethnic cleansing, environmental collapse, every sin, every mistake, every moment where humanity had looked into the abyss. Thalrax watched it all in silence, his expression unreadable. When the presentations ended, he sat for a long moment before speaking. Your species almost destroyed itself. Multiple times, Wilson confirmed. We came very close to not making it. The only reason we're here today is because enough people decided that learning from our mistakes was more important than denying we made them. The Empire has no such records, Thalrax admitted. Our history is sanitized. We erase our failures. We rewrite our conquests as liberations. I was taught that every system we absorbed welcomed imperial rule. I was taught that resistance was always from a small minority of malcontents. Was it? I don't know anymore. The admission seemed to physically pain him. I have served the Empire for 80 years. I have ordered the subjugation of 17 systems. I never questioned whether those orders were just. I believed in imperial superiority. I believed we brought civilization to primitive species. And now I have been defeated by a species we considered primitive. Now I have been shown mercy by people I tried to destroy. Now I don't know what I believe. Pelvin added, Sergeant Flores saved my life on Mars. She could have left me to die beneath the rock. She chose not to. When I asked her why, she said I was somebody's son, somebody's friend, that I mattered even though we were enemies. This concept is not part of imperial military doctrine. It should be, Wilson said firmly. That's the whole point. Your empire conquered 200 systems by treating people as obstacles or resources. Humanity survived by eventually learning to see each other as people. Not perfect people, not always good people, but people who matter regardless. The door to the conference room opened. A young human officer entered looking nervous. Admiral, I apologize for the interruption, but there's been an incident. Wilson stood immediately. What kind of incident? Someone attempted to assassinate Grand Marshal Thalrax, a radical faction from his own fleet. They planted a bomb in this section. Our security forces detected it and tried to disarm it. There was an explosion. Captain Akoy was injured protecting the Marshal. Thalrax rose to his full height, shock visible across his features. Your captain protected me, from my own people. She's in medical right now, the officer confirmed. Critical condition but stable. For a moment nobody moved. Then Thalrax walked past Wilson toward the door. Take me to her. If one of your warriors gave her life to protect mine, I will honor that sacrifice. She's not dead, Wilson said, following him. Then I will honor her courage while she still lives to hear it. They walked together through the corridors of Unity Point, former enemies moving side by side, while the galaxy watched and wondered what kind of future was being built in that moment. Captain Diana Akoy woke to the sound of unfamiliar voices. Her body felt distant, wrapped in medical systems that kept her vital signs stable while accelerated healing treatments worked on the injuries she'd sustained. The bomb had caught her at close range while she'd been coordinating security for the conference level. She remembered seeing the device, remembered realizing it would kill everyone in that section if it detonated, remembered throwing herself between the blast and the delegation rooms. She's waking, someone said in heavily accented English. Akoy opened her eyes slowly. The medical bay was filled with equipment she recognized and some she didn't. Human doctors worked alongside imperial medical specialists, comparing notes on her treatment. And standing beside her bed, looking uncomfortable in the human-designed medical facility, was Grand Marshal Thalrax. Captain, he said formally, you have my gratitude and my apology. For what? Akoy's voice came out rough. For being the kind of leader whose own people would attempt assassination. For creating an empire where peace is seen as betrayal. For needing an enemy to teach me lessons my own civilization should have learned millennia ago. Admiral Wilson appeared at the foot of the bed. How are you feeling, Captain? Like I was used as a blast shield. Akoy managed a weak smile. But I've had worse hangovers. What did I miss? Everything and nothing, Wilson replied. The galaxy is watching. The Emperor himself is coming to Sol system. And we're about to find out if we actually managed to change anything, or if we just delayed the inevitable. 3 weeks later, Emperor Valdric arrived aboard a vessel that made the Eternal Dominion look like a pleasure craft. The Eternity Ascendant was less a ship and more a mobile city, carrying not just military forces but diplomats, historians, scientists, and cultural representatives from across the Empire. If this was a show of force, it was a strange one. Wilson met the Emperor at Unity Point, now expanded into a proper diplomatic station. Valdric was old even by Imperial standards, his carapace bearing the scars of centuries. But his eyes were sharp, and when he looked at Wilson, she saw intelligence and curiosity rather than the arrogance that had characterized Kreth. Admiral Wilson, I came expecting to find my marshal captured or executed. Instead, I find him advocating for peace with the same passion he once brought to conquest. What have you done to him? We showed him our history, Wilson said simply. The unedited version, every war, every genocide, every terrible mistake we made on our path to being better than we were. And this changed him. No, Emperor, he changed himself. We just gave him the information to make that choice possible. Valdric walked through Unity Point, observing humans and Imperials working together. He saw the medical bay where human and Imperial doctors shared techniques. He saw the engineering decks where both species studied the gate technology. He saw children from both civilizations in the observation decks, pointing at stars and asking questions in broken mixtures of their languages. I was told humanity possessed weapons that could have destroyed my entire fleet instantly, Valdric said. Why didn't you use them? Wilson guided him to a small conference room, less formal than the main negotiation chambers. Because we're not afraid of your empire, Emperor. We're afraid of becoming what we used to be. Earth spent thousands of years conquering itself. We were very good at finding reasons to kill each other. Different skin colors, different gods, different languages. We built walls and weapons and entire philosophies around the idea that our differences made us enemies. What changed? We ran out of room for walls. When you're all living on one planet, eventually you either learn to coexist or you destroy everything. We chose to learn. Barely. It wasn't noble or enlightened. It was survival. But once we started learning, we couldn't stop. We discovered that the things that make us different are less important than the things that make us the same. Valdric settled into a seat designed for Imperial physiology. My empire has existed for 5,000 years. We have brought order to 200 systems. We have ended wars, established trade, created stability. By forcing everyone to be the same, Wilson said. That's not order, that's control. There's a difference. Is there? Your species wars with itself when left to its own devices. Mine provides structure, direction, peace through strength. Peace through suppression, Wilson corrected. How many species in those 200 systems actually chose to join you? How many were given the same choice you gave us? The Emperor said nothing for a long moment. Finally, he spoke quietly. I would like to see these museums of yours, these records of humanity's failures. I want to understand what convinced Thalrax that 5,000 years of imperial tradition should be questioned. Wilson took him to Earth, not to government buildings or military installations, but to the monuments humanity had built to remember its worst moments. The Holocaust Memorial, the Hiroshima Peace Park, the Genocide Museums, the Climate Collapse Archives, every place where humanity had looked at what it had done and decided never to forget. Valdric walked through them in silence, his entourage trailing behind. He read the testimonies of survivors, looked at images of cities destroyed by weapons humans had used on each other, studied the environmental records showing how close Earth had come to becoming uninhabitable. At the end of the day, standing before a wall inscribed with the names of millions who died in wars nobody could remember the reasons for, Valdric asked the question that would change everything. How did you learn to be strong without becoming cruel? Wilson looked at the wall, seeing her own reflection among the names. We didn't learn, we're still learning. Every generation has to make the choice again, to remember or to forget, to see people or to see obstacles, to build or to destroy. The strength isn't in never making mistakes, it's in refusing to make the same ones forever. 6 months later, the Treaty of Saul was signed aboard Unity Point. The Empire agreed to democratic reforms over a 20-year period. Earth shared gate technology for peaceful use and committed to mutual defense. Cultural exchange programs were established. Trade agreements were negotiated. Both civilizations established commissions to document their histories, the good and the bad, and to make sure future generations learned from both. Pelvin became the first imperial ambassador to Earth, choosing to stay in the solar system rather than return to a fleet that no longer knew what it stood for. Thalrax retired from military service and began teaching at the Terran Naval Academy, bringing imperial tactical knowledge to a new generation while learning from the humans who had defeated him. Admiral Wilson stood in her office on the TSS horizon, looking at Earth through the viewport. Commander Davis, now promoted to Admiral herself, joined her. "Do you think it will last?" Davis asked. "This peace?" "I don't know," Wilson admitted. "But we gave it a chance. We could have destroyed them. We chose not to. Maybe that choice matters more than we know." 20 years later, the Empire held its first democratic elections. Former Emperor Valdric ran for the Imperial Senate and lost gracefully, congratulating his opponent and praising the peaceful transfer of power. The Gate network connected 500 systems, bringing travel times from months to minutes. Humanity and the former empire became partners in exploration, finding new worlds together instead of fighting over old ones. The conflict became known as the war that ended conquest, not because it was the last war, but because it marked the moment when the galaxy began measuring strength not by what you could destroy, but by what you chose not to.